make sure to follow us on Instagram at Whistlethrowers. It's a great way to interact with our show. Our DMs are always open for questions, topic discussions, and more. You will be able to find our new episodes and other announcements there.
But why do we completely flip how we are officiating the game on the most important play?
All right, thanks for tuning back to the Whistlethrowers podcast. This is Jack Mubarak, joined by
Jack Slaymaker.
The Super Bowl just happened. Obviously, we're Eagles fans. We didn't get the ending we wanted. I just want to give a shout out to the Chiefs because they played their asses off. I kind of thought it was going to be over at half, like when Mahomes was walking that way, but he played even better than he did before the injury. So, we're just witnessing greatness, and there's not really much else to say.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. The performance that we saw from Mahomes, even though it wasn't necessarily a stat sheet filler, Mahomes played out of his mind, and he really willed his team back into that game and eventually into the lead to victory. But the most glaring thing for me in that game was just how dominant the Chiefs were on the line of scrimmage, which is what we thought the Eagles were going to have the advantage on. It was the opposite. I mean, the Chiefs, although their D-line didn't necessarily play that great of a game, they played a much better game than the Eagles' D-line. The Eagles really struggled to stop the run. They got nothing from their pass rush, absolutely nothing. And we said that if Mahomes was going to have that time in the pocket, he was just going to pick you apart all day. It didn't matter who was covering who on the outside. They were going to get open at some point, and Mahomes was going to throw them the ball. We really saw that come to fruition, and it was just kind of disappointing, as a fan, because we had seen how dominant that defensive line was all year. For them to really not show up was just unexpected and extremely disappointing. I don't want this to take away anything from the Chiefs, because the Eagles, I feel like, played worse because the Chiefs played better. I don't think that's any knock on the Eagles. I just think that what we said the Chiefs had better than the Eagles was more important than what we said the Eagles had better than the Chiefs. The quarterback and the coach willed them into that. It really outweighed the talent discrepancy that we felt like there was going into that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just how perfect Mahomes was. And as great as Hurts played, that fumble changed the entire complexion of the game.
Yep.
And it's hard to fault Hurts because without him, the game wouldn't have been nearly as close as it was. But that was just a young guy making a mistake after the team made a mistake, because they should have gotten that first down on the 3rd and 1. There was a false start by Samuel that set them back 5 yards. Then Hurts, it felt like at that point Hurts had the mentality that he had to make the play himself, and he didn't. At that point, it's so much better just to punt, go and take the sack. Don't fumble, don't try to be a hero. Credit to him. A lot of young quarterbacks would have folded in that situation, that big of a game, making a mistake like that. He will calm, confident, put together a great drive, and played well the rest of the game. But, man, it's really easy to think about how the game would have changed had he not fumbled the football. They hadn't returned it for a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it literally, they would have won if he didn't do that. But I don't think that we lost on one play at all this game. I mean, you could look at the fumble, you could look at the quote-unquote holding call, and I think we'll go into that in really big detail in a bit. Miles Sanders was a ghost that whole game.
Yeah.
The whole defense didn't show up, especially our D-line, and that's the reason we got in the position that we were in to even play in the Super Bowl. I mean, we kind of knew that our secondary was going to have problems, our secondary and linebackers, especially with Travis Kelce, but we relied on pressure to make it easier for the guys in coverage, and they didn't. Mahomes had all the time in the world, and one of the best D-lines in history couldn't get a sack the whole game. And I think that's what it came down to. I mean, I really hope that Hurts can learn a lot from this. I think he will. I think he will be back, but I think that the Eagles are going to have a way harder time getting back to where they want to be than they did this year. Because it was their schedule wasn't easy at all. That's a fake narrative, but the NFC is going to get a lot stronger. Yeah. And it's not going to be 2 teams battling out for the conference championship. It's going to be 3 or 4 teams next year at least.
Yeah, and the fact is you're going to play probably 3 or 4 more elite quarterbacks, including Patrick Mahomes, on your schedule next year, which makes it harder for you. And there's really no denying that the Eagles to get back to this point, it's going to be much tougher than it was this year. You know, I do agree with you. Like, the schedule was harder than people make it out to be. And I do agree with the fact that we didn't play any really great quarterbacks. Like, there's no denying that, I think. But at the same time, we did play some really good teams as a whole. But the fact of the matter is, the schedule next year it's going to be tougher. You have to play on the road in Kansas City. It's going to be harder just from that alone. But you're also going to have to play San Fran. Minnesota is going to be there. And you have to play Buffalo next year. So you're going to run into some more challenges. You're not probably going to finish the regular season with 3 losses again. To be honest, like, that probably doesn't get you a 1 seed in the NFL next year, or in the NFC next year, excuse me. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not getting back to the Super Bowl. Like, I believe that the team the Eagles will build next year will be good enough for that. But at the same time, I agree with what you're saying. Like, it's going to be 10 times harder next year to get to this point than it was this year. One of the biggest takeaways of the game for me for the Eagles, because we could go through, and I feel like every position besides wide receiver, well, let me take that back. Besides Smith, Brown, and Goddard. Smith, Brown, Goddard, and Hurts really balled out, played their hardest, played their best, I feel like, on the biggest stage. And those 4 players really, really, really willed the Eagles in this game. But everyone around them really failed to show up, including the O-line, including Quez Watkins dropping that absolute dime from Hurts in the third quarter. Oh my gosh, that will haunt me. And then we could go through everyone on the defense, like, go through them all. Darius Slay didn't play well. Bradbury didn't play well. Gardner Johnson, I feel like, had a decent game, but it wasn't really good enough. And yeah, but the main thing I learned about Hurts is that he is the guy. And he is going to be a perennial top 5 quarterback in this league for years to come, in my opinion. I haven't seen a performance like that from a quarterback in the playoffs outside of Patrick Mahomes that is still playing in this league now that Tom Brady has retired. Oh, well, Aaron Rodgers too. Other than that, the main guys that we talk about who are in the top 10, none of them have had a performance like Jalen Hurts had on Sunday in the postseason. That was remarkable. Highest passer rating ever in a Super Bowl. It's a shame that it ended in a loss. At the same time, you lost to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like, there is no shame in that on the Eagles side, because the Chiefs really, really balled out. Like, there's a lot of credit to be given over there.
Yeah, my player of the game outside the quarterbacks goes to Isaiah Pacheco. This dude balled out. I mean, the biggest question about the Eagles defense was, would they be able to stop the run if the Chiefs decided to run the football a decent amount of time, which they did. Pacheco had 15 carries, 76 yards and a touchdown. The hit he took by C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I would not have blamed that at all if he didn't want to go back to the game. This dude, not only did he go back to the game, he then had a 15-yard carry after that hit.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Bill Parcells talked about as a coach was being Jersey tough. And he was mostly talking about North Jersey. Pacheco's from South Jersey, but man, he played like he was from North Jersey in this game. I am so excited that the Chiefs now seem to have a solid running back with them, and maybe even a future star running back. It's going to be hard having Mahomes as your quarterback to really show what you can do, but having Pacheco just makes the Chiefs so much more dangerous than they were even at the beginning of this season.
Yeah, I think they got like a Tony Pollard there, and that's like better than having a conventional running back in that scheme. So
agreed.
They definitely have something to look forward to in the future.
Yeah. And
the new number 10 is having a great impact like the old number 10 on the team.
And it goes to show that in the NFL, running backs are at an abundancy right now. Pacheco was drafted in the 7th round, and there were probably 4 or 5 other running backs that could have done the exact same thing he did in that spot. But yeah, you have to tip your cap when it's due, and Pacheco blatantly deserves that. I mean, like you said, he balled out. I mean, he played the game of his life that game. They needed that. The Chiefs really, really needed the X factor, and he was that. He opened up a lot because Kelce didn't necessarily have a Travis Kelce game. It looked like on the first drive that they were going to go to him all game long, and then he kind of dwindled out of the game. Their offense really didn't take a hit. Like, they weren't really on the field in the first half, but then the second half begins, and Mahomes is spreading the ball all over the field. And in particular, it was Juju and it was Pacheco that had pretty nice and solid games. Pacheco better than Juju a little bit, but Juju was there. He made some key moments, some key catches, and that's a testament to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, I feel like, because they both put their surrounding talent in the best positions, it's hard to not succeed with them. And I'm not trying to take away anything from Pacheco or Juju or any of the other guys, but they did their job. They played their role perfectly. And that was key for them to win this game because they truly needed those performances from everyone on their roster.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like just the way the Eagles roster set up, they could have 2 or 3 guys do really well and get a win. In this situation, it felt like the Chiefs needed every single play that they got. And the scheming was so much better. And that was a question I had as well last week about how Andy Reid would coach this game if they fell behind. He immediately went to the run in the second half. He didn't back away from anything. Got 10-yard carries on a couple of opening plays, which opened up the wide receivers for the first time all game because before that it was just Travis Kelce. Once that happened, he could start going with the motions. That totally threw the Eagles off, especially in the red zone. And this is something when you watch the film Kansas City that they've done well all season, and basically since they got Mahomes, is they'll have wide receivers go to the outside. They'll run motions. And if you're not prepared for that, you're not going to beat the Chiefs. And the Eagles, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was game planning. I don't know if it was execution. They didn't look ready for these routes. And it doesn't make any sense because the Chiefs are known to do this in the red zone.
That to me is like a coaching deficiency because these are things that should have been beaten down in the film room all 2 weeks that you had to prepare for this game. The Monday you beat San Fran should have been the day you were planning for Kansas City, and it really seemed like they weren't in that game because there were 2 of those fake motion plays where the Chiefs ended up getting red zone touchdowns off it. Where's the adjustment in game? But you're right, like these are things that they have done all year, and these are things that have hurt the Eagles all year. So it should have been scouted prior to that. That's a coaching deficiency in my opinion. But I don't want to blame it all on the coaches either because the talent on the defense just was not there for the Eagles. Like their players just failed to play in that game, and the coaches failed to coach, and like that's a terrible mixture. That's why you let up 38 points. Would you let up 24 in the second half? Like it's just unacceptable.
You can't score 35 points and still lose a game.
Yeah, it can't happen.
And what's been the most frustrating thing, and this goes back to 2017 as well with the Eagles, it feels like the moment they get into these big games, their defense just fails to show up. I mean, thankfully for the Eagles in 2017, Brady Graham come up with one of the most iconic plays in Super Bowl history.
Mm.
But you weren't going to get that this time around.
Yeah.
And it really felt that the Chiefs were just going to drive down the ball and get that field goal at the very end of the game. And I think that's the most frustrating part is that the offense, outside of one mistake, played flawlessly, and the defense couldn't get one stop in the second half.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really a shame. And, like, I can see the blame, like, a little bit for the offense because you didn't keep up with the Chiefs in the second half, but how are you even supposed to? Like, how do you match that? And... yeah. You know, you needed one stop. The Chiefs are the ones that got it. They went up 28-27 and got that 3 and out. And then the punt where it went all the way down to the 5-yard line. Like, that's what you needed. You needed to just get that stop. You didn't even need the long-ass punt return. You needed the stop. And they could not get that for their life. The Chiefs scored a touchdown on every second half possession, except for the last one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, but I mean, dude, terrible punt. Low line drive, easy returnable punt. Like, it's been a problem all year, and it really didn't bite the Eagles until this game, their special teams.
That is true. However, it looked like Tony at the very beginning almost fumbled the ball.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So had the coverage gotten downfield, I think he could have been pinned for a 5-yard gain.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
I do want to discuss the call late in the last drive a little bit because I don't know, like this is just like the way I feel. I feel like major sports games now are just like trying to make really controversial calls just to get a rise out of the fans at this point because I don't know, like I'm not being biased at all. I'm completely taking off my Eagles hat right now. There is no way that you could call a hand on a hip on the last drive of the game.
Yeah.
On one of the biggest plays of the game and call it holding
right
on a 3rd down.
Yeah.
On a 3rd down in the red zone in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like,
and my thing about this is there's a lot of freeze frames where Bradbury had a bit of the jersey, and I don't necessarily want to argue that because it is what it is, but you can't tell me Bradbury restricted Juju from that route. You just can't convince me of that. And the other thing you can't convince me of is that if you go back to every single drop back from Hurts and Mahomes, you can't tell me that you couldn't find a play like that on every single drop back. At least one DB was doing that the whole night long. Everyone was slipping all over the field. You can't tell me that defensive backs weren't grabbing the whole night. You can't tell me that. We saw on the Quez Watkins drop in the third quarter, the DB got there early, was pulling his shoulder and his hip. It didn't get called. I'm not sitting here crying about it. Quez should have caught the ball. It was a bang-bang play. It was close. But why do we completely flip how we are officiating the game on the most important play? That is a sign of incompetence. It boggles my mind that is how the game ended. And we can be mad at it all we want. The bottom line is the Eagles shouldn't have even been in that position. But it's still incredibly infuriating that the referees not robbed the Eagles of the Super Bowl. They robbed Jalen Hurts of a shot to march down and lead his team to victory. That's what they robbed the Eagles of. They robbed them of a shot.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Bradbury didn't hold on to him, but I'm saying, are we really going to call this,
Yeah, I agree with you. It was just minimal contact.
Yeah.
It really was.
And Mahomes aired that ball. It barely was in bounds. It was at the top corner of the end zone.
Yeah, you really can't.
He wasn't getting it.
You can't convince me that restricted Juju of his route. You just can't. You can't.
I do think also that Mahomes threw the ball like that because he did see a hole.
Yeah.
And this is where I think a lot of people who watch the game that don't, because the Super Bowl is watched by many more people than actually really, really know football. And I'm not trying to, I love the fact that the Super Bowl is this huge event, that 100 million people watch it. But there's a difference between holding and pass interference. And what a lot of people, to me, what people seem to think is that it was almost like they saw this pass interference and were wondering why it was called that. The hold is before he could get off the route, regardless of Mahomes throws the ball or not. To me, it wasn't egregious. Greg Olsen put it best. It was a 50-50 call that the refs called. I can't be mad that it was called because to me it was holding, and the fact Bradbury said it was holding, and the way Mahomes threw that ball, to me they just read as holding. What I understand what people are upset about is the fact that it felt like that the excitement of the game was robbed by a penalty.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, definitely not the Eagles being robbed because they put themselves in a situation that they did not need to be in at all. Had the defense even showed up for 3 plays, the Eagles would have won this game. Not easily, but they would have won. I think it's frustrating when you have all these people watching that don't necessarily know football, but they're excited for the game, and then you see that. It's understandable why there's people that don't want to tune in every single week when you see something like that.
Yep. Yeah. I completely agree.
I kind of want to push back on you saying that Mahomes threw that when he saw the play. I think that was the closest the defensive line got to bringing Mahomes down, and that was a throw under pressure, and he couldn't get the ball off to anyone in time, because I think that was the closest that our line got to sacking Mahomes all game.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do anything with the ball at that moment, and further proves the point that the hold had zero effect on throw, the play, the route. It's just an unrelated call, and you only are supposed to call holds when they affect the play at hand, and that wasn't the case on this play.
I mean, not all the time, though, because I've seen so many holding calls where it's on the opposite end of the field where the ball's thrown. So that's where defensive holding it's a very gray area. And it's something that the NFL needs to figure out so they can avoid controversy like this. But to me, at the end of the day, it was a hold. And it sucks that it happened like that. But to me, it was, and again, it didn't affect the game the way that I think a lot of people think it did. The Eagles did not get robbed. Yes, they would have had another opportunity to drive down the field. But again, you can't. This is what we talked about with the 49ers and also Bengals. You can't put yourselves in situations to allow the game to be called by the ref. Because this is exactly what happened with Tom Brady every single time, and it could be avoided. You know that the NFL is going to favor certain guys. It's better for them if they do. So don't put yourself in a situation where a game is affected by a referee.
Yeah, I do agree with you, and I do agree that by the rule it was a hold.
it's just my thing is like, you didn't call that the whole game. And like what I'm saying is it felt like every single time someone dropped back to pass, there was one defensive back on the field doing exactly what James Bradbury did in that situation. And not one flag was thrown for it all night. So why do you completely flip the way you're officiating the game on the final play? Like, that's where I draw the line of incompetence of officialing. Yeah.
That makes it so...
That's what makes it frustrating.
I understand that irks people, and it kind of irks me too.
Yeah.
But again, I think for me, just hearing how other fan bases have been complaining about the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then seeing that, like...
Yeah, that's why I don't want to blame the game on that. That's why I don't want to say the Eagles got robbed of the game because of that. Yeah.
The Eagles had all the momentum in the first half.
Right. No, they had that game won. Bottom line, they had it.
The part where I realized that the Eagles were probably going to lose the game was right at the beginning of the second half when the Chiefs marched on the field with basically no incompletions and Pacheco getting 10-yard carries twice.
Yeah.
And they scored a touchdown within the first 5 minutes. I mean, if you're allowing the offense to do that right at halftime, that shows that you didn't stick with your game plan and realize what was going on. And the Chiefs' game plan in the second half was flawless.
Yeah, it really was.
It goes down to Andy Reid being able to say, okay, what's not working? And Eric Bieniemy saying, what do we need to change in order to get our offense to get going right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that they just made better coaching decisions and better halftime adjustments. I've also heard people complain that the halftime shows too long. Guess what? If you're going to Super Bowl, you've got to prepare for every single factor.
Yeah, sorry.
And the issue is that the Eagles coaching staff is only in their second year. Hurts is only starting his second year, is only a third-year quarterback. And most of these guys on these rosters, outside of 4 or 5 guys, have never even been to a Super Bowl.
Right.
And when all that happens, you're going against a team that's been to the Super Bowl 3 of the past 4 seasons. You're going to run into issues. You're going to run into teams that are just going to adjust better than you are.
So, do you guys have any more points of the Super Bowl, like NFL in general?
Just one more. Like, that was one of the best Super Bowls I've ever seen. Like, objectively, taking my fandom out of it, that was an incredible football game.
We need more like that.
Yeah.
And, have we ever seen like the two like MVP candidates, like the 1 and 2?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you, but something tells me this won't be the last time the Eagles and Chiefs meet in a Super Bowl, and it won't be the last time Mahomes and Hurts are 1 and 2 for the MVP.
I'd like to see it because like I've never seen 1 and 2 candidates, like the consensus 2 best teams in the conference go against each other.
Yeah, and I feel like the Eagles and Chiefs will be in this situation again where they are consensus the best teams in their conference, and then they meet in the Super Bowl just like this one where it's just high-powered talent all over the field. And like the fact that the Chiefs are built for long-term success tells me that they will be back. And I feel like the Eagles are also built for long-term success, and it tells me they will be back. And we don't really see this in the NFL too much where teams have like the Cavs and Warriors went 4 straight times. I'm not saying that, but like we don't see teams even really rematch in the Super Bowl a lot. Like the Super Bowl teams get flipped a bunch, and we see recycled teams a lot. Like that's a good thing about the NFL is the championship normally isn't the same teams over and over and over again. But at the same time, I feel like the Chiefs and Eagles being that good with that much young talent tells me they'll meet again in the Super Bowl at some point.
Yeah, I have 2 quick points. One, actually, I said, I guess it was last night or Sunday night, if Burrow, Mahomes, and Hurts all stay healthy throughout their careers, they will be the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL and run the entire league.
Yes.
I have no doubt about that.
I agree.
Maybe there'll be another quarterback that also steps up, but besides that, I don't really see anyone outside of those 3. I was hoping Josh Allen would, but the Bills are in a really tough place right now. Allen's turnovers are starting to be a problem again like they were at the beginning of his career, and it's sort of covered up by the fact that he's such a great athlete and a great quarterback, but at the end of the day, those turnovers are going to hurt you in playoff games, as we already saw. Mahomes and Burrow and Hurts don't turn over the football a lot, which leads to a lot of success. My second point is something that happened today, officially, with Jonathan Gannon getting hired by the Arizona Cardinals. I don't understand how you can watch that Super Bowl and decide that this is the guy you want to go with.
Completely agree.
He's better than Kingsbury, though. That's the thing. Like, even still, he's better than Kingsbury.
Yeah. But is that high of a bar?
Is that you're going for a coach who is defensive-minded, who has been a terrible defensive coordinator. It's fine if you want to go with something different than Cliff Kingsbury, which, by the way, saying that Gannon is better than Kingsbury is not that high of a bar considering how bad Kingsbury was as a college coach. The only reason that the Cardinals took that risk is because they thought they would elevate the offense, which did not happen. Do we really think that Gannon's going to be the guy to, first of all, bring the talent level of the defense up, and then also try to resurrect an offense, even though he's not an offensive-minded coach? Like, the whole thing just seems off, and a really bad idea by Arizona. And maybe I'll be proven wrong, I don't know. But to me, right now, it just seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And that's sort of what I thought to myself too, because after the Super Bowl, my emotions are running high and I'm like, I want Gannon out of here so quickly. I told myself there's no way Arizona hires him after watching that. And I thought there was no team that would want to hire him after watching that. And yet they do. And I'm not very mad about it. I mean, I think that the Eagles could be refreshed with a new face at defensive coordinator. I think that at offensive coordinator, they're going to promote Brian Johnson, the QB's coach. So they're going to stay in-house with that, which is very smart, in my opinion.
So I want to move into the NBA. We missed a couple trades, especially the big one, Kevin Durant.
Yeah, wow.
So
wait, was that was literally midnight that we recorded our last episode.
Not to totally pat myself on the back for that one, because I didn't know for sure, but I did kind of call it during the last episode.
Yeah.
Where I said, hey, the Nets could be making one of those baseball trades where you don't really know what's going to happen until right up into the deadline.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what they did. I don't know how they kept this that much of a secret.
I know. I was just going to say that, too.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't usually happen with high-profile NBA trades, but somehow they were able to do it. And I feel like that this trade, it works for both teams in certain ways.
Yes.
I mean, the Nets at this point, to me, have given up hope on this season. I mean, not fully, because they still have a lot of good rotational players, but it sort of feels like the Nets team that made it to the playoffs, I guess, 4 years ago, 5 years. I forget.
With D'Angelo Russell.
When they ran into the Sixers in the first round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they have a bunch of good role players, but no superstar to bring them together, which they'll be looking to get in the offseason, for sure.
So the full trade was Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, 4 first-round picks, and a 2028 pick swap for Kevin Durant and TJ Warren. So, massive trade. Jay Crowder actually didn't end up staying in Brooklyn. Yeah. He got traded to the Bucks in exchange for 5 second-round picks. Just wanted to make that note really quickly. Kevin Durant's not going to be playing for the Suns for at least until the All-Star break, probably a couple weeks after. Expectations, I think they're going to contend for the finals spot in the West, 100%. I really think that the West got a lot better, and we're seeing a lot new teams come in and it's not the Lakers, Warriors, not even the Warriors anymore. It's going to be the Suns, Mavs, Nuggets, Pelicans. It's just a whole new look for the West.
Well, I disagree with you, actually. I think the Warriors will be in the Western Conference Finals.
Really?
Yeah, that's going to be probably my bold prediction right now because of how far back they are, and Curry's not healthy right now, and they need some help right now, big time. They are looking in a dire spot, but Steph Curry is Steph Curry, and I think that if he's healthy, the Warriors will be in the Western Conference Finals. And I think that it's going to be a bloodbath for the other spot. Obviously, we have to see how the playoffs shake up. The Warriors could be the team that gets the Nuggets in the second round and knocks them out. Or they could also run into Dallas or Phoenix in the second round. Which I think would be an incredibly tougher matchup for Golden State, running into Dallas or Phoenix than Denver. But you're right. I don't really see the Nuggets. I don't see them putting up the numbers that Phoenix or Dallas does. I just don't think that they have the star power required for it. And as much as I love Jokic and Murray, it's sort of thin after that. And I feel like even Dallas is a team that has a little bit more muscle than Denver does roster-wise. And obviously, if Phoenix has Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and Kevin Durant on the floor at the same time, those are 3 of the best offensive minds in the game right now. That's going to be deadly.
Yeah.
And I feel like Phoenix is a team that needed some maturity. And they got that with Kevin Durant. I know Durant seems like such an immature guy with how he's handled stuff in the past,
But I feel like the past is the past and the future or the present is right now. And for the Suns, that is looking better because I think Durant has matured a lot and that I think he's going to bring maturity to an immature team because I think that's what Phoenix was. Chris Paul isn't really the type of seasoned veteran that Kevin Durant is because he hasn't really had the playoff success and stature that Durant has had. Devin Booker, we all see, I mean, he's one of the young NBA superstars. He has that personality, and we all know what I'm talking about when I say that. That can be detrimental to a locker room. I'm not really sure that it's been Booker's fault. I don't think that Booker has necessarily helped. And then Ayton has just had all this drama all year.
He's got to be happy now, though.
Yeah, like, I think that has... I feel like the page is flipped on that. Like, get this happening, Ayton is like, well, why the hell would I want to leave this right now? So I think that Phoenix has the best shot to take out the reigning Western Conference champs.
What's so interesting about the West is how quickly it's flipped.
Yeah.
From being the Warriors and Lakers running it, basically, to now some Motley team. I'm so excited for this Kings team. And I know that we haven't really talked about them a lot, and I don't know how they're going to do in the playoffs, but just the fact that we're talking about them as a top 5 team in the West this late in the season, it's just a nice feeling.
It is.
Such a great story. And again, I don't know how long it's going to go once they get into the playoffs, but man, I hope that they can keep this up considering all the trades that's happened. They did beat the Mavs on Friday night and then only lost to them by 5 in overtime on Saturday. So already a team that's traded for a superstar they're competing against, which has to be a great sign for them this late in the season.
Yeah, and if the season ended today, they'd host a playoff series, and that's got to be for like the first time in 30 years or something.
Well, they haven't even been to the playoffs since 2001, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's literally been that long.
Yeah, I mean, they got De'Aaron Fox is playing great this year. Kevin Herter's been solid. Their roster, it sort of feels like where the Nets are at now that they traded for all these pieces, but the difference is that they've been feeding off of each other all season, and they're just congelling at the right time.
I could definitely see the Nets doing that with a full year of the squad.
Yeah.
Maybe dumping Simmons too, because...
I think we're headed down that road too. Another team in the West too that might be sneaky is the LA Clippers, because Kawhi, you can never count out a Kawhi Leonard team, I feel like.
They got Bones Highland too.
Yeah, that's a really nice addition.
Yeah.
And they got Eric Gordon too. That's a pretty good ad for them. They could make some noise. I think that they have the star power if you are healthy. I feel like the Clippers have not been able to click it together in this Kawhi PG era, but they sort of have the team for it.
They do.
Yeah, another team we didn't talk about either is Memphis. Memphis is sneaky. I'm telling you, they're sneaky because of how tough and gritty they are.
They're in their own way, though. Like, they don't really have that guy that, like, Phoenix got with Kevin Durant to, like, hold him down. And they need it way more than
It's sort
Phoenix.
of a Pandora's box, honestly, in my opinion, because I feel like that energy they create for themselves could either kill them or carry them, if that makes sense. But, yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, I feel like they got in their own way last year against the Warriors. Like, I think they had more of a shot than they actually put up. And then, like, they kind of, like, Dylan Brooks was talking to Curry, and it's like, why are you poking the bear? Mm-hmm. And it ended up hurting them.
I could kind of see that rivalry right there being like LeBron whenever he plays Toronto. Like, I just see it playing out in real time.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to go over these trades really quickly because we didn't get to a lot of them.
Yeah.
I'm looking at all these through Official Sports Place. Our friend Ari, who we had on the show a couple times, he's been really, really fast with these, and he's been like my only guy for like sports news now, and he's the only guy I really need for it. Like, he posts consistently every day, multiple times.
Yeah.
You don't need to follow any other sports accounts, like, for real.
Yeah.
All right. I said Jay Crowder for 5 second-round picks.
Yeah.
And have you guys noticed a lot of guys have been getting traded for 5 second?
I was going to say that too. I forgot to say that. That seemed like the odd trend of this trade deadline was 5 first-round picks or something like that. It was weird.
Yeah. And then we got Thomas Bryant getting traded to the Nuggets for Davin Reed and 3 second-round picks. We got Matisse Thybulle going to Portland Trailblazers. in a 3-team trade. The Sixers get Jalen McDaniels, and the Hornets get, how the fuck do I pronounce this shit? Svi Minkolov.
Oh, yeah. Svei Mikhailuk.
Yeah, whatever. And 2 second-round picks. We got...
Yeah, I just want to go to that trade quickly because it was an interesting one. McDaniels in his first game played solid off the bench, 8 points, 5 rebounds, made a 3-pointer, although Thibault apparently made, 4 threes in the first half in his first game with Portland?
Yeah.
Yep.
Something crazy. Like, I'm interested to see what happens to Thibault now that he's given more space. Not that he didn't have the space to shoot, because he did, but it felt like to me that his mind was always more on defense and that he didn't feel like he had to rely on himself to be an offensive-minded player, where now you're going to a team that has scorers, but also you're going to have to – you can't just rely on Maxey to shoot a 3 or Harden to shoot a 3 or Embiid to get open to shoot a 3. Like, you sort of have to make your own shots, and I feel like that might increase Thibault's confidence in himself. Confidence I didn't necessarily have as a defensive-minded player with the Sixers.
This is kind of weird now, but I've never seen Matisse take like a mid-range jump shot.
I know.
Jump shot. Like I don't know. Like I feel like the role for the Sixers was, like you said it, like he had to create his own shot a bunch, and they really were trying to push that 3-and-D player onto him, and it just wasn't working in that way. Like with our offense, so maybe it'll work with Dame because obviously he's a way different scorer than Embiid.
Yeah, right.
We'll see. I'm rooting for him, though. I really like the guy, even though he shoots with 2 hands.
Yeah, I like.
So the Pacers are acquiring George Hill, and this was part of the Jay Crowder trade. So this was actually really interesting. This was a trade that didn't happen, but there was a lot of rumors of it happening. So the Bulls and Knicks were in discussion for dealing Zach LaVine to New York. And I thought this was really interesting because, like, we all know that the Bulls are going to blow it up because
It's really getting nowhere.
Yeah. New York would actually be a really interesting destination for him. Like, they got Randall. I mean, he's not that great. They have RJ Barrett, who's pretty good. They have Jalen Brunson, who's having a perennial all-star season.
Mm-hmm.
I think he should have been an all-star over Randall. I don't know how that happened, but it did. I think that would be a way better situation for him than with Chicago. I don't think it would be like he'd be contending for the East at all, but it would be like what they thought the Bulls would end up being, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I definitely can agree with that. And like, I'm not sure what it is necessarily with the Chicago situation, because I feel like they have a pretty solid big three. Like, I like LaVine and DeRozan, and I really like Vucevic. I think he's an underrated player in the league. For whatever reason, it just really hasn't seemed to click. I think it's because of the lack of a point guard, really, on that side.
Yeah, it's Alonzo Ball being out for like almost a year and a half now. And
that really, really dampers them because they pay him so much money and they can't distribute that to the other players that they actually need, because Lonzo's never really on the court, it seems like. But yeah, I think that it's coming soon, a LaVine departure. Pretty soon a DeRozan departure too. I don't know, LaVine, I feel like could go somewhere sneaky, like Sacramento. Sacramento could really use a player like that. Like, they have really solid offensive players, above solid, really good offensive players. Sabonis is a really good offensive player, and De'Aaron Fox is too. But they don't really have the bona fide scorer that LaVine is. And LaVine would add that to Sacramento, and that would really, really be a good addition for them. I think they should explore that in the offseason. And as for DeRozan, I think that, like, literally any contending team could use a guy like DeRozan, a consistent shooter, a guy that's going to give you effort, and a guy that's a leader. DeRozan could really help any contending team, but the best team fit for him, another team in the West, I think Denver really could use a guy like DeRozan. And Denver could actually really use a guy like LaVine too. So I think that those guys are going to go to teams like that where they sort of need a number one option to help their number one option, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, Jokic needs a guy to help him consistently, and like Murray sort of failed at that. Even though I like Murray, he hasn't been as consistent as they need him to be.
Yeah, and Michael Porter Jr., I feel like he needs to step up to be the second option, but health kind of prevents him from doing that on a consistent basis. So they need like a more reliable guy, and I think DeRozan would be perfect for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do see Nikola Vucevic is a free agent this year.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of teams that could use him. the Kings would be great because it would
Yeah.
push Sabonis to the 4.
Yeah.
And they get some leadership there. But back to the trades, I did talk about the Bones Highland trade. Darius Baisley is going to the Phoenix Suns for Dario Saric and a second round pick. I think that's a really underrated pickup. Like, Phoenix is just collecting guys. They lost a couple young guys. They're getting one back.
Mm-hmm.
So good luck for them. This was one of my favorite trades of the whole season. It was the 3-team trade between the Warriors, Pistons, and Hawks. So the Warriors got Kevin Knox, 5 first-round picks. I think they lost this trade between the 3. The Pistons get James Wiseman, and I'm happy that he got out there because he wasn't getting the role he needed or was ever going to get in Golden State. So I hope he'll get like a good young core going and he could actually like showcase his talent because he wasn't getting the ability to.
Yeah, the Pistons interest me because they are a team that added, I believe it's like 5 or 6 lottery picks onto their roster now. I think like they added Kevin Knox, Wiseman you talked about, Ivy is a lottery pick, Sadiq Bey was, they traded Sadiq Bey.
Yeah, they traded him to Atlanta.
Yeah, okay. They have a couple more on there that I'm forgetting, but they have a really solid core. Like, I like Killian Hayes. I love Ivy. I think Detroit has a pretty nice future, especially when they get Cade Cunningham back. And this has been proven to me because of how scrappy they look. Like, they remind me a lot of the Magic. The Magic have showed me promise for their future. A lot of these young guys really look like they can build something. That's how I feel about Detroit, too. And I like the Wiseman ad for you. I'm with you. I really, really like that. And I think that Wiseman going there and having a chance to sort of revitalize his career, because it's really gone off the tracks so far. Like, he's really struggled to stay healthy and get on the court. So a team like Detroit will help with that. And another guy that I really like, the youngest player since LeBron James to have 30 points and 15 rebounds in a game, Philadelphia's own Jalen Durant, Roman Catholic High School. I love this kid, and I think that he's one of the more underrated young talents that we have in the league. I think he's going to have a breakout year next year when he's got a guy like Cade Cunningham on the floor distributing him the ball out of the pick and roll. Then when Ivy takes a step 2, that's going to really help a guy like Durant. I think Durant will prove to be a really, really strong piece for them. A lot of length, a lot of athleticism.
Yeah, it's been really good to see a lot of these young teams that we didn't really know a lot about have some sort of future. Detroit and Houston, they've got, I feel like, a long way to go. The team I'm most excited about is the Thunder. They've just been, despite the fact that they've basically sold off a lot of their players just to get at least like 10 first-round draft picks, and yet they're still in the bubble, is just, they're outside the bubble right now, but they're still relatively close. And that's just got to be a good feeling for Thunders fans that you still have a long way to go in this process, and you're still competing with some of the best teams in the West. I did not expect that out of the Thunder team. I thought they'd be much closer to the where the Rockets are, than where a team like the Pelicans are.
Yeah, agreed. And a lot of that promise is due to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is showing to be that he is going to solidify himself soon as a top 10 player, like very, very soon. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, they have a lot of promising guys over there too. You can build around and that you can be excited for the future. Like, you can throw them in the category with the Magic, Pistons, and Thunder. Like, I feel like they're outplaying their roster a little bit, and that's due to their guys exceeding expectations. And that's when you really start to get excited about your future as a fan.
I think that covered it for most of the trades. There are a couple guys in the buyout market, or that I think are going to be in the buyout market. First, obviously, Russell Westbrook. I don't see him ever playing a game in Utah, and it doesn't look like he ever is going to. The Magic plan to buy out or cut Patrick Beverley, and the Houston Rockets intend to cut John Wall. So I'm not really intrigued with John Wall. I mean, I think we kind of just know what he is at this point. Like, he'll show flashes of his old self, but he'll always battle health and like won't ever have his athleticism back. I would be really intrigued for a lot of teams to get a guy like Patrick Beverley or Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, I agree. I think that both of those guys could really help some contending teams. And a lot of it is because of their experience and their leadership. Like, although a lot of NBA fans don't like Beverly, I feel like Patrick Beverly is one of the more liked players by NBA players. Like, I think that his teammates really like him, and he's been on a lot of teams to where he's interacted with a lot of players. People like him, and another guy along the same lines is Westbrook. We know that Westbrook was a superstar MVP. He has a long list of accolades, and he is a very, very well-liked player throughout the league, even more so than Beverly probably. Having a camaraderie guy like Westbrook just come in and be able to fit into your locker room is huge. And I think that for now, what Westbrook and Beverly bring is not what it used to be necessarily, especially for a guy like Westbrook, but it's still valuable to winning basketball, I think. So I think that they can help, and I think that they should be main targets for contenders in the buyout market. Like, I'm not sure. I'd have to go through each contending team really and see which one needs a backup point guard that desperately. Because, like, you think like Boston, they have Brogdon there. They don't really need that. I'm not sure. I guess Philadelphia is one that could really use a guy like this because...
Or the Clippers.
Yeah, Clippers definitely too. I mean, even though they traded Wall, so they won't get him. But yeah, Westbrook and Beverly definitely for them. And
Mavericks.
Yeah, probably. Mavericks too. Because I'm not even sure who their backup point guard is. So yeah, that would probably be best fit for them. But like, we obviously know with the Sixers, like guys like Milton just aren't really going to cut it right now. And they're not going to cut it in May. That's for sure. So getting a guy like Beverly is a good move for them. And I'd be interested to see if Westbrook would want to come here.
Him and Embiid have problems, though. Yeah, I don't know. That would work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Embiid also had problems with Drummond as well. And that turned into... I think it's just the competitive nature of some of the guys in the NBA where they are both stars on their respective teams. And then when you run into each other, there's going to be conflicts. Embiid's a trash talker, Russ is a trash talker, Drummond's a trash talker. When all these guys run into each other, there's always going to be some issues. But at the end of the day, if you got traded to that team, they'd be fine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any doubts about that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I'm actually kind of excited for this All-Star break. I want to see if the dunk contest will actually... I think it'll be decent because, like, there's no way they can have the dunk contest from last year and repeat that.
Yeah,
because, like,
right.
no one would ever watch it again.
Yeah. No.
So it should be interesting.
Well, actually,
I just wanted to go over some college basketball stuff that's happened recently with March Madness about a month away from starting, and conference tournaments less than that. Purdue lost in another upset, this time to Northwestern, who's been, again, solid team. They fought off a bit in the last couple of weeks or so, but they're still putting together quality wins and are just outside the top 25 rankings. Probably the biggest shocker out of all of it is the fact that Florida Atlantic University is 24-2 and ranked 25th in the country. I just am very surprised at that. There's been a couple other smaller teams that have stuck in as well. San Diego State's still up there in the rankings. Gonzaga, even though they've fallen back a bit, are still ranked 13th. So the hardest part about making a bracket this year is there's no clear number one, and it's really bounced back between Alabama, Houston, and Purdue. But I'm not really sold on any one of those three teams. So it could be I would pick anyone in this top 25 to make a run and get into the Final Four.
Yeah, I agree with you, Aiden, on that. Like, it seems like the top five are really closer to the field than they were in past couple of years. Like, right now, number one is Alabama, who's looked great, but also they've shown signs of being not as good as we think. And we've seen it with Houston. They've lost to Temple at home, which was a terrible loss. And there was a lot to be exposed from that. And we've seen Purdue be upset now twice. Bad upsets, bad losses for them, where Zach Edey was nearly taken out of their offense by Northwestern because Northwestern was giving him a lot of trouble passing out of the post. And that's going to be a huge problem for Purdue if they can't get Zach Edey to make the right reads out of the post. I agree with you. Like, anyone in this top 25 can make a run. I completely agree with you. And I think there are teams outside of the top 25 that can make a run.
Oh, for sure. The other thing that's interesting about Purdue, too, is that their best quality win since conference play started was against 24th ranked Ohio State, and they only won by 2 points. They were not favored in the Indiana game, even though Indiana's 21st, and Indiana won by 5. And the 2 bad losses that they've had to Northwestern and Rutgers, they were held under 70. So if Purdue runs up against a strong defensive team, I don't see them winning that game.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, which is a problem in March Madness because that's when defenses become so much better.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think the team I'm most sold on is Alabama just because Houston's losses are to even less quality teams than Purdue. But, yeah, it's like we both said, like, it's just a field just wide open this year, which is great. And it's, to me, that proves that the transfer portal and NIL, at least for college basketball, has worked in spreading out the competition.
Right, yeah. And it's worked. It feels like it's worked better in college basketball than college football because it seems like there's a lot more controversy behind the transfer portal and the NIL than there is in college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, did you see Jim Boeheim was still complaining about it, though?
Yeah, and he's like the only old coot that's like really running his mouth about it.
Yeah, I think the hardest part for him is that Syracuse is no longer seen as a viable team in the Big East, especially now that UConn's come back and just the history that UConn has and the fact that it's not in upstate New York, which is it's hard to recruit anyone to go up there, especially if you're a struggling program that feels like it's been at the same place for the last decade or so.
Right.
That's not, I mean, when you look at some of these other teams, Miami has controversially done a lot with NIL, and now they're ranked 15th. If I'm a college basketball player who's getting recruited and saying that I can now use my name, likeness, and image to get paid, and I can spend my winters playing basketball for a top team in South Beach, why the hell would I not do that?
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, that's the same thing I feel like San Diego State, that's another reason why they've done better. And it's different from college football because college football is played, first of all, in the fall. And second of all, there's only about 10 teams that can actually compete for a national championship.
Yeah.
As we saw with St. Peter's last year, if you get into the tournament, you can go as far as you think or will your team to go.
Yep, completely agree. And in this type of field, it seems like another St. Peter's is coming.
Yeah. I mean, Pittsburgh, which obviously has a bigger student body than St. Peter's had, but nowhere near the basketball accolades as some of these other schools, I can see them making a run.
Mm-hmm.
Roberts has gotten a few teams to sort of try to rank them up. They made a decent run two tournaments ago.
Yeah.
I can see them doing it again. And even Charleston, even though they've struggled a bit recently, they were still ranked in the top 25 for a while. There's no reason why they can't get back on track either in the last 5 games, and then I believe they're in the Colonial. But there's no reason they can't make a run in that either. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these last 5 regular season games go, how all the conference championships go, and then sort of figuring out from there who can make the deepest run. But we're going to find out in the next 3 weeks or so which teams are coming together and which ones are sliding at a time when you don't want to be sliding.
Right.
So I think that'll do it for this episode. We'll catch you next Saturday. Actually, scratch that. We may switch the dates up now that NFL season's over with. But I know I sound a little nasally. I'm just coming down from being sick the last week. And today we're recording this on Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day, and don't be like Playboy Cardi. Alright, see you guys next week. Peace.